Is sports betting actually ruining sports?
I can't go that far and say that sports betting is ruining sports. I think we need to ask ourselves before we answer that question, what exactly does ruining quote unquote sports mean? Because viewership in the NFL has never been higher than it is right now. Viewership in college football has never been higher than it is right now. The TV network money has never been higher than it is right now. The amount of money that's being invested into all of these professional sports leagues and also into college sports as well has never been higher than it is right now. So, I mean, if you want to look at the dollars and cents of it all, if you want to look at the viewership numbers, then of course not. If anything, you could say that sports gambling is actually helping sports. And I think to a certain extent, it is. Because what sports gambling has done has opened the door to allow people to care about things that maybe they previously wouldn't have cared about. I host Hoops 360 with Cassandra Negley. We do a women's basketball podcast, and we talk so much on that podcast about the massive growth in women's basketball, both in college and at the WNBA level. A big part of that is because of the star value, you know, the Caitlin Clarks, the Angel Reeses, the Sophie Cunninghams, the Nafisa Colliers, so on and so forth. But I think another big reason for that is because of gambling. The people are paying attention to the WNBA because they've got $50 on Brianna Stewart's over under point total, or they've got, you know, $50 on the Lynx minus 2.5. So I think that has opened the door, at least for new sports fandoms. If gambling is what gets you as a kind of the gateway drug to get you to care about new leagues, well, then great. That just makes you a more well-rounded sports fan. I would say of overall, my thought on this is not that it's ruining sports. It's changing our relationship with sports. Maybe for the good, maybe for the bad. It's just different. Because, like I said, we're fans of more sports. We pay attention to more sports now because we are kind of financially invested. The other side of that, though, is now since people are personally financially invested into the individual performances of players or the individual performances of teams, I think our fan allegiance has gone by the wayside a little bit. No longer are we cheering for our favorite players and our favorite teams all the time. We're cheering for our bottom line. And I say we, I'm saying collectively as a sports fan society, we are cheering for the teams that we put money on, or we're attacking on the internet or in person the players that, you know, reach the under on their point total when you put 20 bucks on the over. It's changed our relationship with how we watch, how we consume, and how we feel about sports. But at the end of the day, if it's not going anywhere. Sports gambling is so ingrained in the sports experience that the toothpaste is out of the tube. Like, we've opened up Pandora's box. We've got sports shows on FanDuel TV. We've got, we've got all sorts of sports books ads on the field, on the sidelines, commercials in the middle of games. We've got LeBron James as a spokesperson for a sports book. We have so much money that's being made from sports betting. It ain't going anywhere.
Well, I mean, that's why, Caroline, I'd make the opposite argument that most make. Gambling has actually saved sports. In the modern climate where it's impossible for things to cut through and you have to have money to get anything done, gambling's where a lot of that comes from. In fact, look back at the post from Yahoo Sports a few days ago about the most watched TV events. Of the 100 most watched TV events in all the land, 95 of them last year were sports events. So everybody is still watching sports. 90 of the top 100 events were football between the NFL and college football combined. Most of that, the NFL. The fact is, how many people watching right now have a group text that's just about parlays? How many people watching right now ride with or against their buddies depending on whether or not they're on a heater? And to your point, you've got leagues that are sponsored by gambling. You've got promotions that are sponsored by gambling. You have TV shows all over the place, content that is sponsored by gambling. It's all being made because gambling dollars help get it made. And I don't want to miss the most obvious portion of this. If you love the NFL, for example, remember that the salary cap is determined by how much revenue is brought in by the league. Where's a lot of that revenue come from? Gambling. Whether it's selling TV spots or whether it's direct sponsorships, either way, it's the money from gambling that is a large part of why we see this massive, not the money from your personal account that goes into your favorite sports betting platform. No, but the sports betting platforms deciding that they are willing to spend so much money on advertising to make sure that you know that with $5 you can get free play here. That is not accidental. that money is part of what's fueling athletes making more money than ever. It's part of what's fueling a rise in the salary cap. It's part of the reason that teams like the Dodgers are willing to pay whatever it takes because they know they're going to make money. It's part of the reason that even college sports are looking around and saying there's money in this everywhere. So, yeah, there are bad apples taking advantage of it, sure. But to say that it's killing sports, I think it's the opposite. I think gambling is a big part of what, in the modern climate where it's so hard for content to cut through and for people to cut through, and it's so hard to make a difference when there's so much everywhere, gambling is a big part of the money that actually makes all of this happen. So, Caroline, I think while it's safe to say, hey, we continually catch people that are breaking the rules and this is a problem. The problem, to your point, is never going to go anywhere if your answer is eliminate gambling.
You're not going to. And the pushback that I think that might exist to your point, Fitz, that gambling is safe in sports is, well, gambling has now questioned the integrity of the game, our faith and our trust in the integrity of the game. And look, if that's how you feel, I can't really argue with you. Coming off the heels of this NCAA basketball gambling scandal that just came months after the NBA gambling scandal, that came after the Shohei Ohtani translator gambling scandal, that came after Calvin Ridley's gambling scandal, they came off of hockey gambling scandals. I mean, how many scandals have we had? I mean, look, that's 6 right there just in the last calendar year. That doesn't even include going back to the last, 5 to 8 years, I think is fair, of this timeline of modern day legalized sports gambling. So that I think is fair. That is fair to feel that now you have questioned the integrity of games because we have now had all of these point shaving scandals. But to that, I would say this isn't new. Gambling, point shaving, game fixing has existed since the beginning of time. Go back to the Chicago Black Sox, Pete Rose, the college basketball gambling scandal of the 1950s. Just because we have sports gambling apps on our phones does not mean that that's the invention of compromising the integrity of some of these games. This has existed since the beginning of time. But now we just know about it. Now we are inundated with it. Not only with all of the news stories that are coming out, NCAA scandal, NBA scandal, so on and so forth, but we are also inundated with ads. My parents live in St. Louis, Missouri, and Missouri just became a legalized sports gambling state on December 1st. So they are brand new to all of it. And I asked my parents, like, are you sick of all of the ads yet? And they said it's constant. It's constant on social media. It's constant on TV. Every single billboard you passed is a different casino or a different sports book. So you are literally swimming in the deep end of so much of this just gambling content and gambling promotion. So I get it if you just feel like it's at a different level, or if it's just overwhelming the amount of gambling content that we see on a daily basis, but it's not new. And if we all of a sudden just say, okay, sports gambling is illegal, everything that we legalize, we're going to take back. First of all, that's never going to happen, but let's live in a world where it does. What does that do? What does that do? That doesn't mean gambling goes away. That just means that gambling is no longer regulated. It's the same thing when weed was legalized. I thought it's a great thing because now you get safe, regulated weed that your tax dollars and your money gets put back into your local economies, and it helps your local community. So it doesn't, we can't act like all of these things, all of these vices, gambling, drugs, alcohol, are just going to go away if you make it illegal. But if you make it illegal, what you're doing it is just pushing it to the back of the house instead of having these guardrails in place to make sure that we're doing it the right way.
Well, and I hear you, and I think you're really right that trust is being eroded, but also personal responsibility is being thrown away. And part of this, and when I say that, like, to me, half of the people that are out here on Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it now, that are telling you every week, oh, the NFL is so rigged. It's obvious that this thing is rigged. My answer to that is always the same thing. If it's obvious to you that it's rigged, why are you watching? If you're so upset about it, if you are convinced that there's truly a script, stop watching or embrace it like the WWE and become part of whatever you think that is. Like, if you truly believe it's rigged, why are you supporting it? The number of people, because you're right, there are so many people that are sitting here saying, oh my God, you can't trust, this thing is so fixed. Coaches know the over-under. And they're saying that while they're looking in their phone, placing more bets. if you truly believe that this whole thing is fixed and you're too stupid to stop betting, that's not my problem. Unfortunately, that's where we are now. Like, everybody seems to want somebody else to step in and fix this. And the thing is, like, to me, sports gambling has become such a part of the community of sports fandom that it's part of what makes, the whole experience grow. Much like fantasy football, something that Yahoo is obviously wildly invested in. Fantasy football is a part of what brings everybody together during football season. I would argue that in general, the number of times that I see my sports fans' texts blow up on a Tuesday night because there's a wild person popping off that nobody expected, and people have weird parlays. Like, this is just part of the community that has come around sports. The problem is, I do think we're going to wake up in 15 years and wonder why so many people have a gambling problem. The thing of it is, it's not up to sports to fix that. It's up to everybody right now to look around and say, wow, I need guardrails. I gamble. I make no bones about it. I've talked about it on this show. I gamble. This year, to be fully transparent, as I've been on this show, I lost all the money I was comfortable losing on football in the first month of the season. And you know what I did after that? I shut it down. And I haven't placed a bet since because I lost what I'm comfortable losing. And next season, I'll stack it up again, and hopefully I'll do as well as I did a couple of years ago. That is up to me to have my own personal responsibility. I think part of what's happening right now is there's a lot of people yelling at the gambling problem like it's up to gambling to fix personal responsibility. Like, it's up to each of us as individuals to own our own you-know-what and figure it out, to me, Caroline. Like, I'm not trying to be harsh, but I just think that it's not society's job to fix every single individual's inability to control themselves. It's up to some people to turn around and put their phones down.
It is fascinating to me anytime we have one of these, point shaving scandals or, the latest gambling news. It's always sports gambling's the problem and not bad people are the problem. Or these people that continue to show up in these indictments, they're the problem. It's the system, or it's sports gambling. And look, is sports gambling perfect? Of course not. I do think that it could potentially lead people down very scary and dangerous roads, but I don't think that's any different than any other vice that exists out there. When somebody gets a DUI, it's terrible, it's awful. There is zero excuse to be driving while under the influence. But I don't see anyone pointing the finger to alcoholic beverage companies. I don't see anyone pointing the finger to car manufacturers. No, we point the finger to the person who decided to make the bad decision to drive while under the influence. That is your fault. You made a bad decision, and now you have to pay for that. It's nobody else's decision. It's the same reason why I always kind of roll my eyes a little bit at I feel like a little bit of pearl clutching that happens when we hear a lot of people outraged that, let's say LeBron James, for example, he's partnering with DraftKings and he's in DraftKings commercials. I'll hear so many people say, like, how dare LeBron James be that kind of, sponsor something when he's a role model. I'm like, it's not LeBron James's responsibility to babysit your kid or, be the moral high ground for all the children across America. Like, what's the difference between LeBron James being in a DraftKings commercial versus Tony Romo being in a Corona commercial? Kids watch football games that Tony Romo calls. So we can't keep putting the onus on individuals and the people that work with these sports books or the sports books themselves or sports gambling as a whole. Are they perfect? No. Are they flawed? 1,000%. And there are certain guardrails that I think do need to be in place, and a lot of times are in place. That's why I have faith in the system. But we can't be pointing the fingers at the system as a whole rather than the individuals. We don't do that in any other industry in America.
And the fact is, look, in my career in media, I've been doing this professionally for about a decade. Over the course of that decade, to be fully transparent, I've made money reading about companies like DraftKings and FanDuel. I've gotten paid to do that in my life.
Yeah.
Never once did I sit down and say, oh, what message is that sending to the children, right? Like, because at the end of the day, parents need to parent. And this is where I'll be the old man in the room. And sometimes I think, I say that jokingly a lot to you and really to our audience a lot of times. But I think there's perspective that comes from it because people may not remember, and I do because I was a music kid. In the 80s, there was a heavy metal band, Judas Priest, that was literally sued by a group of families because their kids committed suicide, which was a tragedy. But they sued Judas Priest for the music, saying that the music caused the action. I'm old enough to remember when we sat here and said, wait, You can't say that in a song because kids will listen to a song. And now we look at it and don't apply that logic at all. I'm old enough to remember when we looked at music and said music is causing society to go downhill, instead of looking at music and saying embrace what you want to embrace. And I know they're very different things, Caroline, but to me, there's just an element of all of this where when things come into society, whether it's music or whether it's when, frankly, you could start looking at porn on your phone instead of having to go to seedy places to do it. Each step of society's growth in these things, whatever you want to call it, change in these things, each step of them has caused more people to have more things at their fingertips. How they manage that is just up to each individual to do their best. It's the wild, wild west out there with gambling right now. And I don't envy parents that are trying to figure out how to navigate these waters. I don't at all. But also, at the end of the day, I can't make it LeBron's job or Kevin Hart's job in any of these commercials or any other entertainer's job. I can't make it their job to sit back and say, well, I don't want to talk about gambling because I have 12-year-old fans. I take that responsibility seriously when you have young fans. And it's a reason why when I was in a band that was lucky enough to have a big song that was very popular with the younger audience, we didn't drink on stage. We didn't have alcohol in the crowd. We took that seriously. I can take that seriously, but not look at LeBron and say, hey, man, it's up to you to make sure that you don't advertise a gambling site because that could turn one of your kids into suddenly a gambling addict. It's just the number of steps we're going through. I think it's all fair to look at it and say, man, there are bad apples. But remember, bad apples are doing bad things. Like, if the answer is let's get rid of gambling, do we really think it will get rid of point shaving? Because, again, these things that were all done on this scandal were all already illegal. So is there a problem? Yes. Do I know how to solve it? No. But is the solution getting rid of gambling? I don't think gambling is ruining sports. I think it's saving it.